Welcome to the Cheating and Love Tales channel. Drip, drip, drip. That's what finally pulled me from the half-sleep I'd fallen into on the couch. Some leak in the kitchen faucet, barely audible, but constant enough to seep into my dream. I opened my eyes. Darkness. My neck ached, a deep crick that refused to pop. The clock read 2:14 a.m. I blinked against the dull haze of the living room lamp, the one I'd left on in case our son wandered downstairs. My back felt stiff from the lumpy cushions. I dozed off in my clothes again, no plan to head to the bedroom. Didn't want to go there. Didn't want to lie next to her. Not tonight. I sat up slowly, still tasting the bitterness of an earlier argument on my tongue. Except it wasn't exactly an argument. I'd made a show of politeness. That's how it's been lately. Forced civility. Forced everything. She had no idea what rotted behind my smile. The humiliations, the suspicions confirmed, and the plan forming in my mind. I heard a rustle upstairs, like sheets shifting. Maybe she'd noticed I was gone. Maybe she'd roll over and go back to sleep, unbothered. That little sound from the second floor, it set me on edge. My body felt tense, coiled like a spring, ready to snap. I was so sick of it, a feeling like I had to watch every breath I took in my own home. But I had to be careful. My revenge wouldn't work if I let the anger take over now. I forced a slow exhale. Inhale. Exhale. The shrinks call it breathing exercises. The army taught my dad a simpler name for it. Self-control. I turned off the lamp, letting the room go dark. Better that way. I swiped my phone off the coffee table and unlocked it. I'd recorded one conversation earlier that evening. Sam had repeated what I asked her to, line by line, not understanding why I insisted. She'd thought it was some game. "Tell me again," I'd said, pressing her. "Please, I need to hear it in your voice." She complied, half smiling like it was just a quirk of mine. "On the recording," she says, "I've never gone anywhere with him besides the ski lodge." She repeated it twice. A lie. I have proof of that already. My son's photo. The text messages I intercepted. But I want her on record, calm and unguarded. Step 1 in killing trust. Gather the evidence of each deception. I replayed it quietly, the soft hush of her voice in my ear. My fingers trembled with the urge to crush the phone. She'd repeated the falsehood so casually, so convincingly. I found myself both disgusted and intrigued by how easily the lie slid off her tongue. I set the phone aside and stared into the darkness. I still remember the day the test results came in. I'd been suspicious for a while. I wasn't the father. That conclusion hammered in my skull for weeks, even before I held the printed genetic report in my hand. There was something in Sam's demeanor, something about the timing of her frequent ski lessons, that set my teeth on edge. Our son, bright-eyed and always wearing a grin, had no clue about the tension building between his parents. He handed me the phone once, showing me a photo of her with the ski instructor, Mike Donovan. A tall, lean man with a wide grin and reckless confidence. "This is Mom's new friend," my boy had said. Innocent, unaware. I forced a smile, patted his head, and told him to run along. But inside, a fuse blew, because I recognized that grin. I'd seen that face in the parking lot more than once, next to her car, bent in conversation, too intimate for casual friends. A part of me knew. I was sure. And eventually, I had the cold, scientific confirmation. Not my kid, his. She must think I'm too stupid or too trusting to figure it out. Or maybe she thinks I'll never confront her. That's where she's right, in a way, because I won't challenge her openly. Not yet. I want the kind of revenge that grows roots, that wrecks entire foundations, and leaves everything in rubble. Quick revenge is too easy. I can do better. I will do better. My throat felt dry, so I trudged to the kitchen, stepping carefully to avoid the squeaky plank near the hallway. The dripping faucet greeted me, each drop a small echo in the silent house. I placed a glass under it, twisted the knob. I took a gulp of tap water, letting the cold shock my mouth awake. Then I let out a grunt. My mind wouldn't quiet. When I closed my eyes, I saw him, Mike Donovan, pressing his lips to her neck, or guiding her on the slopes, or maybe both. The image was intangible yet painfully vivid. Easiest way to chase it off was to busy myself, so I decided to tinker with the faucet. A perfect excuse to stay out of that bed. Except as soon as I knelt down, my mind flashed back to earlier that day. She'd been out again, running errands. The forecast had predicted fresh powder on the slopes. She came home with a faint flush on her cheeks and the smell of snow in her hair. I knew, in that moment, she'd been with him, probably nestled in some private cabin, or maybe just the backseat of his Jeep. I didn't dwell on the specifics too long. It would only make me snap. Instead, I pressed a brief kiss to her forehead, trying to ignore the taste of cold wind and guilt. She didn't recoil, but she paused, eyes flicking away. I recognized that micro-moment of guilt. She forced a smile. "Did you eat? I can heat something up," she said. So casual, so domestic. I wanted to watch her squirm, but I just nodded. "Sure, thanks," I mumbled. She left to the kitchen, and I stared at her silhouette, thinking about that unstoppable train of betrayal barreling down the tracks. I took another sip of water now, letting the memory fade. My wife, Sam, once so full of life, so warm. We met in college. She was the spark to my structured nature. That dynamic used to excite me. Now it just burned. She must think I'm the same gullible man I was at 22. I'm not. A few hours earlier, we'd had one of those tension-thick dinners. Our son, blissfully oblivious, chatted about some class project. Meanwhile, Sam avoided my eyes. I asked leading questions. "So how was your day? Where did you go?" She offered vague details. The marketing client she had a meeting with, a store she browsed, though she couldn't recall what she bought. Then she looked at me, politely curious. "And you?" she asked. "How was your day?" I almost laughed, right there. Does she want me to say I spent half the morning on the phone with a private lab, confirming the DNA results, or that I rummaged through her texts after that? Instead, I said something about finalizing a big sale for the medical devices company. A safe, neutral lie. I turned off the faucet, placed the glass in the sink, and headed upstairs, careful not to make noise. At the top of the landing, the door to the master bedroom was open just a crack. The hallway was thick with shadows. I peered in. Sam lay on the bed, the covers half draped over her legs. She was still, except for the rhythmic rise and fall of her breathing. Fast asleep, or a good imitation. I slipped into the guest room. That was my new bedroom, anyway. I hadn't shared the marital bed for weeks, using random excuses. Work calls, migraines, insomnia. I wanted her to think it was stress or my own restlessness that kept me away, not her betrayal. I flicked on a small lamp. The guest room always felt a bit neglected. We'd never really decorated it beyond basic furniture. I closed the door gently, sat on the edge of the bed. My phone lay heavy in my pocket. I set it on the nightstand. The urge to press play on that recorded conversation gnawed at me again. But I resisted. Hearing her lie once more would only stoke the rage. Instead, I pressed my palms to my thighs and let out another breath. Time for the plan, I thought. He'll trust in 3 steps. Step 1. Gather her lies. I was halfway done. I had her voice recorded, had texts and pictures. Enough to prove how many times she'd twisted her stories. Step 2. Show the illusions. Let her see I'm a safe, clueless husband, so she feels confident enough to lie even more. That was trickier. I had to maintain normalcy at all costs. Make her believe I suspect nothing beyond mild dissatisfaction in the marriage. Let her keep digging her grave. Step 3. Reveal the truth at the perfect moment, tearing down all illusions, not just for her but also for him. And if possible, let it bleed into the next generation. Something so deep it scars their children's future. Yes, I will wait. wait for the perfect time to bury them in the consequences. I can't recall falling asleep. My mind must have exhausted itself. When I woke, early morning light seeped through the blinds. I could already hear Sam downstairs, rummaging in the kitchen, probably making coffee. Normally, that'd be my job, but we'd grown used to separate mornings. I rolled to my side, phone in hand, and quickly checked the battery. I was too on edge to stay in bed. So I got up, splashed water on my face in the small guest bathroom, and headed down. She stood by the coffee pot, wearing a gray sweater and leggings. Her hair was slightly disheveled, but she still had that winter glow on her cheeks. She gave me a wary smile. "Morning," she said. "Morning," I replied. My voice was gruffer than usual. She turned back to the coffee. "I was about to bring a cup up to you." "That's nice of you," I said, stepping closer. I let my hand rest gently on her waist, an affectionate gesture that made her freeze a moment. She's not used to casual touches from me anymore. Good. Keep her guessing. She resumed pouring coffee, trying to appear natural. I watched her carefully. The tilt of her head, the tension in her jaw. She was remembering something. Maybe the messages she'd exchanged with Mike, or the fact that she told me one story but lived another. Possibly she was re-evaluating if I suspected anything. Let her guess. Our son bounded into the room, bright-eyed. I forced a fatherly grin. "Hungry?" I asked him. He nodded, so I started making toast. The mundane domestic routine felt surreal, like I was performing in a play for an audience of two. Inside, all I could feel was a slow, simmering wrath. It buzzed like static in my brain, overshadowing everything else. Breakfast ended. She said she'd take our son to school. I nodded. "I'll see you both this evening," I said. "Working late tonight." Another lie, or maybe a half-lie. I'd be working on finalizing my revenge. Sam gave me a quick, almost reluctant peck on the cheek before heading out. I wondered if she'd see Mike right after dropping our son off. The thought clenched my teeth, but I forced calm. When they left, the silence settled. I put on a jacket, grabbed my keys, and went to the garage. Work, yes, eventually. But first, I needed to stand in the place where I'd discovered the DNA test results. It was an odd compulsion, but it felt necessary. That place was a private lab across town, a discreet facility that catered to paternity tests and genealogical research. I'd go there again, talk to the same technician, maybe get an official copy with their letterhead. Something about having the official version in my hand made the betrayal real in a tangible way. I arrived at the lab, recognized the front desk. The woman behind the counter gave me a polite smile. "Back again?" she asked. I nodded. She asked what I needed. "Another copy of the paternity results, please," I said quietly. She typed into her system. The hush of the place reminded me of a funeral parlor. Muted, respectful, uncomfortably clinical. She handed me the printout. I read it again, even though I knew every line. Probability of paternity: 0%. My hands trembled slightly. I thanked her and slipped the paper into a file folder. Driving to work, I felt a roiling anger build in my gut, but I also felt an odd sense of satisfaction. This was a building block of the plan, a piece of stone in the foundation of the revenge I would craft. The day at work was a fog. Meetings, phone calls, emails. My boss asked if I was all right. I forced a tight smile, said I had some personal stuff going on. She let it slide. On my lunch break, I retreated to my office, locked the door, and took out my phone. I opened the recorder, scanning the file names. I labeled them carefully. Her lie 1, her lie 2, and so forth. I felt an obsessive satisfaction in the categorizing. Each lie was a puzzle piece. I had the text logs from her phone, too. She'd left it unguarded one night. Another sign of her arrogance. I forwarded the messages to my own email, then deleted the evidence of forwarding. She typed flirty lines, references to secret spots on the mountain, and the rush of being together. The words burned in my mind, humiliating me, fueling me. I told myself, patience, Jim. The plan matters more than your immediate fury. I guess it's that army discipline Dad hammered into me, or just the quiet, methodical personality I always had. Let the evidence accumulate, let the tension climb. She needs to be comfortable in her lies. I'll let her spiral deeper. After work, I lingered in the parking lot, hoping to avoid going home too early. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. Should I pick up pizza, or do you want something else? So normal. So ordinary. My chest tightened. I replied, pizza is fine. She fired back a thumbs-up emoji. My face twisted in a mixture of revulsion and reluctant amusement. She was probably texting with her lover at the same time, juggling two men in separate windows on her screen. It's disgusting how easy it is for her. Finally, I headed home. The sky had turned dusky pink. Approaching the house, I saw her car in the driveway, our son's bike tossed on the lawn. I closed my eyes for a moment before stepping inside, trying to recompose. She greeted me with an almost cheerful tone. "You're just in time," she said, pointing to a box of pizza on the counter. My boy was already munching on a slice, sauce smearing the corner of his mouth. I forced a light grin, ruffled his hair, then set my briefcase by the hallway. "Long day?" she asked, sounding concerned or maybe just polite. "Yeah," I said, "but it's done." I grabbed a slice and sat down. She poured me a glass of water, then hovered a moment like she wanted to say more. I stayed silent, letting her flounder. She eventually busied herself, rummaging for plates. We ate in near silence, save for our son's chatter about something funny that happened in school. When we finished, I excused myself to the living room. She put our son to bed about an hour later, and I waited, phone in hand. When she came back downstairs, I started part 2 of the day's evidence collection. I invited her to sit next to me on the couch. She did so, a bit wary. "Something on your mind?" she asked. I nodded. "Sam," I said softly, I just want to be closer again. Lately, we've been so distant. I'm worried about us." That was all true, ironically, but not in the way she thought. Her eyes glistened, as if guilt threatened to spill. She dabbed at a non-existent tear with the back of her hand. "We've both been busy," she said, voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry if I've neglected you. My marketing projects, the new routine with our boy." I placed my phone on the table, screen down, recording. "You can tell me anything," I said, forcing vulnerability into my voice. She nodded, uncertain. Then I asked, "Those ski lessons, do you still see that instructor? Mike, right?" Her cheeks reddened, maybe from embarrassment or fear. Yeah, sometimes," she said, swallowing. "But it's harmless. I just wanted to stay active on the slopes." Right, I murmured. "And you're sure there's nothing else going on?" I caught her gaze. She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, nothing. We're just skiing." She repeated it, unprompted, as if hoping extra emphasis might convince me. I wanted to laugh at how brazen she was. I offered a faint smile, let her see only a fraction of what I felt. I feigned relief and leaned in, brushing her hair aside. "Thank you," I whispered. She exhaled, as though she believed she'd dodged a bullet. "Would you say it again?" I asked, my voice low, intimate. She blinked. Say what?" "Just that you have nothing going on with Mike," I said. "I need to hear it, to feel safe." She frowned, obviously puzzled. But she repeated it, in a soft, reassuring tone. "I have nothing going on with Mike," she said. "I promise." I studied her face, no flicker, no stutter. A masterful lie. My phone caught every syllable. Perfect. Another piece of the puzzle. I placed my hand on hers, gave a slight squeeze, then released it, acting as if I was comforted. "Thank you. That helps a lot," I said. My blood boiled beneath the surface. but I forced my expression calm. Let's get some rest. Yeah. She nodded, relieved. She rose, headed upstairs. I told her I'd follow soon, that I just needed to lock up. She disappeared. I ended the recording, labeled it. Step by step, she was forging her own downfall. I listened to a snippet, enough to confirm the audio was clear. Then I quietly moved to the guest room again, letting her wonder if maybe I'd join her bed later. I didn't. I wasn't sure I could keep my composure if I lay beside her. Time blurred again. Days, maybe weeks. Scenes come at me in random jolts. I remember stepping out into the crisp morning air, hearing the crunch of snow under my boots. The sun glaring off the drifts, almost mocking me with its brightness. I remember Sam leaving in a hurry, phone clutched to her chest. I remember picking up our boy from school, hearing him excitedly share he'd once seen Mr. Mike at the grocery store with Mom. All these images swirl, each hammering me with the knowledge of her deceit, and behind them all stands my vow of vengeance. Then came the day I spied on them, physically. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to see. I left work early, having guessed Sam might meet him mid-afternoon. Fewer people on the slopes. I drove to the ski lodge, parked where I could watch the exit. Soon, I saw them emerge. Sam in her white ski jacket, him in his instructor gear, laughing together. They tossed their equipment into his Jeep. She kissed him, quick but unmistakably intimate, scanning the area to see if anyone watched. I ducked, heart hammering in my chest. The rage was a living creature in my veins. I took a photo from behind the steering wheel, my hand shaking. Another record for my trove. An hour or two later, I went home. She arrived not long after, breathless, cheeks flushed from either the cold or passion, or both. She found me rummaging in the fridge. "Hey," she said, like any normal wife returning from errands. I straightened, gave a tight nod. She definitely looked guilty, but I faked a mild smile and asked how her day was. She repeated the usual script. Marketing meeting. Picking up groceries. My mental scorn flared, but outwardly I just said, "That's nice." For a week after that, I avoided her physically. She tried, occasionally, to bridge the gap. She'd come into the guest room late at night, slip under the covers, press herself against me. I remember the first time she did that after I'd seen her with him. My mind roiled with images of their bodies entwined. I nearly shoved her off, but I reined it in. Instead, I forced myself to gather more. Another chance to collect data. I flicked on my phone's voice recorder, disguised as reading something on the screen. Then I played the part of a welcoming husband. She laid her head on my chest. I felt her breath, warm and sweet, but it made my stomach turn. She tried to kiss my neck. Her hair smelled of shampoo laced with another man's sweat. I can't prove that, but it's what my mind insisted on. Still, I let her murmur about how our relationship will get better. She said it with a sincerity that might have moved me once, but no longer. She started to say, "I'm sorry if I've been distant," and I cut in softly, No, me too. We'll fix this." She nodded, teary-eyed. "Yes, we will. We can make it right." She kissed me. I forced a response. My phone recorded it all, the rustle of sheets, the half-gasp she gave when I brushed her hair back. It was more painful than arousing. I endured it, playing the role, the dutiful husband. My heart hammered with an anger so fierce it nearly derailed me. But I needed her confessions. I whispered, "Tell me again there's no one else." She moaned softly, repeating the words, and I saved them all. The next morning, the guilt in her eyes was almost comical. She tried to be extra sweet, making me breakfast, pulling me in for a goodbye kiss before I left for work. I wonder if she thought a single night of half-hearted intimacy would blind me to her double life. If so, she was more of a fool than I'd realized. Meanwhile, the seeds I planted kept growing. I told her that evening we should plan a family ski trip soon. Watch her reaction. She froze, then scrambled for an excuse. Maybe after the holidays. It's so busy up there right now. She was worried I'd see her lover. She tried to mask it, but I sensed the panic. We never had that family ski trip, obviously. Instead, I bided my time, focusing on a new approach, letting Mike see glimpses of me, letting him wonder if I suspected. I'd show up at the lodge unexpectedly, wave to him from a distance, pretend I was just passing through. Each time, he gave me a tight grin, raising a hand in greeting. Once I approached. "Hey, you're the ski instructor, right?" I asked, extending a hand. "Name's Jim. My wife sometimes takes lessons with you." He swallowed, forced a professional smile. "Mike Donovan. Good to meet you." We shook hands. He radiated that easy charm, but behind his eyes, I saw it. He knew who I was, or at least suspected. "You should get on the slopes with us sometime," he said. A polite invitation, maybe an attempt to diffuse suspicion. I gave a laugh. I might just do that. The tension lay thick between us. I left, smirking. After that, I orchestrated one more confrontation. Not direct, but enough to unnerve him. My boss asked me to entertain some potential clients at a fancy restaurant in town. Perfect. I texted Sam earlier, "Late meeting, don't wait up." Then I made sure Mike was around, gleaned from overhearing a conversation at the lodge that he often visited a certain bar after hours. I brought the clients to that same bar after dinner. We sat in a corner booth, talking business. Halfway through, I excused myself to the restroom, scanning the crowd. I spotted him by the bar, chatting up someone. His posture was relaxed, casual, probably feeling triumphant. I approached from behind, clapped him lightly on the shoulder. He jumped, nearly spilling his drink. "Jim, right?" he said, turning. Surprise flickered in his eyes. "Fancy seeing you here." I nodded. "Small town, huh?" He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, guess so." I paused, letting the silence drag. "Sam's at home," I said, my tone pointed. He nodded, forcing a laugh. "Oh, sure, yeah. I haven't seen her in a bit." Another lie. "Good." I patted his shoulder, then left him to stew. My colleagues, oblivious to the undercurrents, teased me about leaving them too long. We resumed our conversation, but I kept glancing at Mike, watching him shift uncomfortably. By the time we left, he was on his phone, probably messaging her about the close call. Perfect. Keep them both uneasy. Let it simmer. One evening, everything changed. I just put our boy to bed. Sam was in the bathroom, drying her hair. My phone chimed with an unknown number. The message read, "Need to talk to you about Sam. 10 p.m., behind lodge." That was it. My pulse kicked into high gear. I typed, "Who is this?" No reply. I recognized the style. Could it be Mike? Maybe he wanted to come clean, or threaten me, or something else. I checked the clock. 9:20 p.m. Perfect. I told Sam I was stepping out for a drive, that I needed some air. She frowned but didn't protest. At 10 sharp, I parked behind a lodge. The place was quiet, the slopes closed. The moon lit the snow in a dull glow. I saw a dark figure leaning against the wall, arms folded. As I approached, I recognized him. Mike. He wore a heavy jacket and a beanie, his breath fogging in the cold. He shifted when he saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the night air thick with tension. Finally, he said, I'm sorry. I know this is weird. I got your number from her phone a while back. We need to talk." I shoved my hands in my pockets, feigning calm. "Talk about what?" He inhaled. I think Sam's husband suspects something. She's been acting paranoid. I wanted to see if you..." He caught himself, realized I was the husband. "Wait," I said, letting a mocking edge slip in. "You do realize I'm Sam's husband, right? Are you so used to lying you can't keep track?" He stiffened. "I know. Look, I'm not proud of what's happening, okay? I think she's going to break it off. And I'm worried about her. She seems messed up about something. I cut him off, stepping closer. My fury flickered hot, but I pressed it down. You're messing around with my wife, and you're worried about her. He ran a hand over his face, looked away. Yes, actually. She told me she can't keep lying. She's stressed. She's worried you'll do something drastic. She says you're not yourself lately. I laughed quietly, a hollow sound. And what do you think I'll do? He shrugged, eyes flicking to my fists. Look, man, I've seen enough divorces. I get it. It's messed up. But let's just keep it civil. I'm not trying to cause trouble. That statement was so absurd I almost punched him right there. I forced a sneer. Oh no. Of course not. You just sleep with married women and father their children. No trouble at all. His eyes widened. Children? Wait. What are you? He stopped. Realization dawned. Sam must not have told him about the paternity. Interesting. I felt a savage thrill. I stepped back, letting him see I had the upper hand. Yeah, I said, I know exactly who my boy's father is, but you might want to confirm that with her. He stammered, at a loss. This was better than I'd planned. He truly had no clue. His face went pale. Wait, what do you mean? I raised a hand, cutting him off. Talk to her, I said, voice low. Because you're in this deeper than you think. And me. I'm just getting started. Without another word, I turned, leaving him there with the swirling snow. I felt his gaze boring into my back, but he didn't follow. I reached my car, adrenaline coursing, a grim satisfaction in my veins. I drove home slowly, my mind a storm of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I wanted to see him squirm, watch Sam panic as he confronted her about the child. On the other hand, I needed to keep some control over the timing. I still had more illusions to spin, more recordings to gather. But maybe this was enough to start the final phase. Let them break each other in confusion. Let them scramble. Let them make mistakes. Then I'd deliver the finishing blow, publicly, so they'd never recover. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw the porch light on. Sam was waiting by the window, arms crossed. She rushed out when I stepped inside. Where were you? She demanded, voice shrill. Just driving, I said, shrugging. You worried. She scanned my face. You look different. Did something happen? I allowed a mirthless smile. I realized something important. I said, stepping past her. I'll tell you soon enough. She didn't like that answer, followed me to the living room. Jim, please, we have to talk. I feel like things are slipping away. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. Tell me you trust me, she pleaded, eyes brimming with tears. For a moment, I almost lost my composure. My hatred flared so high I had to look away. When I turned back, I forced a calm tone. I do trust you, I said, each word a knife in my throat. I just need some space. She nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. Okay, I'm sorry, she whispered. I gently wiped a tear away, playing the caring husband. She sank against me, sobbing softly. I stroked her hair, all the while picturing her entangled with him. My skin crawled. By the next day, Sam was jumpy, checking her phone incessantly. She disappeared for a few hours, probably meeting with Mike, presumably to handle the bomb I dropped on him. That evening, after our boy was asleep, she approached me with shaky resolve. Jim, she said, I need to tell you something. My heart hammered. I kept my expression neutral. What is it? She led me to the couch, perched on the edge, knees pressed together. There's been something going on. With Mike. It started as skiing, but it got physical. I'm so sorry. She broke down, tears streaming. I wanted to unleash a savage, I know, but I forced composure. Physical how? I asked quietly, for clarity on the recording I just started on my phone, concealed under a cushion. She hesitated. "Sex," she said in a whisper, like it was a disgusting secret. A few times. "It was a mistake. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you." She tried to grab my hands, but I pulled back, feigning shock and devastation. In truth, my shock and devastation had come long ago. Now I was focusing on controlling my voice. "Why?" I asked. "When did it start?" She admitted it had been going on for months. She claimed she felt neglected, lonely, uncertain of our relationship. She found Mike exciting, an escape. "But it's over," she sobbed. "I swear it's over." I pressed my palms to my eyes, as though trying to hold in tears. "I can't believe this," I murmured. She continued weeping, saying it was a horrible mistake. "Please forgive me," she kept repeating. "I can't lose you." I nodded slowly, letting the silence stretch. When I spoke, my voice quivered, half from real rage, half from carefully orchestrated acting. "I need time. This is a lot to take in." She nodded, tears soaking her cheeks. "Of course. Anything you need. I'm done with him. I swear." I let her see heartbreak in my eyes, though it was mostly fury. Then I stood, retrieved my phone quietly. "I'm going for a drive," I said, stepping away. She reached out, but I brushed past. In my car, I reviewed the new recording. It had everything. Her admission, the timeline, her tears. Perfect. Now all that remained was revealing the paternity. It would break her, and I'd watch it happen. I felt a grim satisfaction. We were heading into the final act. I spent the next few days steering clear of confrontations. I let her apologies wash over me, her pleas for conversation. I avoided her. She probably thought I was reeling, needing space. She had no idea that behind the scenes, I was preparing. I compiled the audio, the text logs, the pictures, even the paternity results. I put them on a flash drive labeled Family Photos, an inside joke only I understood. Finally, I waited until a Friday night. I arranged for a family dinner. My parents were visiting from Ohio. Her parents were in town. Our siblings, too, though they weren't close. I invited them anyway. I pitched it as a big family get-together at our home, a chance to mend fences and show that Sam and I were working through our issues. She was delighted, seeing it as a sign I was moving toward forgiveness. If only she knew. The night arrived. Snow flurries drifted past the windows. The house glowed with warm light. The dining room table was set for 8, plus our boy. My parents arrived first, still fussing about the altitude. Her parents came next, awkwardly greeting one another. My father, an old army officer, shook hands firmly with Sam's dad, who tried to appear equally robust. Tension lingered. I heard Sam apologizing to her mother about some old family drama. Meanwhile, I bided my time, exchanging forced pleasantries. In my head, I was rehearsing the final blow. Before dinner, we all gathered in the living room. Sam was in the kitchen finishing the meal. My father sipped a drink, eyeing me with concern. "You sure you're okay, son?" he asked. I mustered a grin. "Fine, Dad. Just a bit on edge, that's all." He nodded, not pressing. Sam eventually came in, cheeks flushed from the stove's heat, wearing a hostess smile. "Dinner's ready," she announced. We took our seats. The conversation was forced but civil. Our boy was the bright spot, chattering about school. I watched Sam. Her eyes flicked to me occasionally, searching for reassurance. I gave none. After we'd eaten, I cleared my throat. "I have something I want everyone to see," I said. I turned to Sam, who looked puzzled. "Remember, honey, those family photos I found?" She frowned slightly, but nodded. She had no idea what I meant. "Yeah, sure," she managed. I stood, retrieving my laptop from a side table. I hooked it to the TV in the corner. Sam's mother asked, "Oh, are these from when you went skiing last year?" She tried to recall some event. I just smiled. "Something like that," I said. I inserted the flash drive, opened a folder named Family. Sam's brow furrowed more deeply now. My father looked uncertain, but said nothing. I began clicking through photos, some actual family memories. Me in the yard with our boy, Sam holding him as a toddler. Everyone smiled. A wave of nostalgia passed around the table. Then, abruptly, the real show began. A screenshot of Sam texting with Mike. The messages flirtatious, explicit. The entire room fell silent. Someone gasped, maybe her mother. Sam's father lurched forward, confusion etched on his face. Sam jumped up, voice trembling. Jim. What? I clicked again. Another image. Sam and Mike embracing in the lodge parking lot, date stamped. I heard my father hiss under his breath. My mother put a hand to her mouth. Sam's mother looked at her daughter in horror. Sam's face went white, tears forming. Jim, please, turn it off, she whispered, stepping toward me. I ignored her, clicked again, playing an audio file. Her voice filled the living room, trembling as she confessed her affair. It got physical. I'm so sorry. Everyone heard it. My son looked frightened, no clue what was happening. Sam scrambled to pause it, but I blocked her. The room vibrated with raw tension, shock, betrayal. My father broke the silence. James, he said, voice tight, what are you doing? I stared at Sam. I'm showing everyone the truth, I said. She sank to her knees, sobbing. Stop. Please. Not like this. But I wasn't done. I clicked one last file. The paternity test. The words glowed on the screen in stark black and white. Probability of paternity. 0%. I pointed at it, voice cold. My father, my mother, hell, everyone at this table. Meet Mike Donovan, the real father of our child. He just doesn't happen to be here tonight, because I decided to keep that part private. But now you all know. The boy I've raised for years. I'm not his biological father. Sam let out a broken wail, covering her face. My father's face went dark red. Anger mingled with heartbreak. Her parents gaped, struggling to comprehend. My mother tried to comfort our boy, who was crying, confused by the chaos. The entire room crackled with tension. Sam crawled over to me, tears streaming. Jim, no. We can fix this, she choked out. Don't do this to him. I looked at her, my expression full of scorn. Do this to him. You did this. All I'm doing is telling the truth. She sobbed uncontrollably, trembling. I stood there, letting the gravity of it settle. For a moment, I felt a pang of regret. My son, he was innocent. But so was I. Once. She took that from me. The entire house reverberated with grief and shock. I turned to my father, whose eyes glistened. I could see in him the old soldier, once so proud of discipline and honor, now shattered by betrayal in his own family. He said nothing, just stared at Sam with barely contained rage. Sam's father tried to speak, but words failed him. My mother cradled my son, tears sliding down her cheeks. He was too young to understand, but old enough to sense the devastation. Then I turned to Sam, who knelt at my feet. Do you want to say anything? I asked, voice raw. She looked up, eyes wet, face desperate. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I never meant. She couldn't finish. I felt no pity. All the pity I had was gone. My father rose, took my mother aside, and guided our boy upstairs, presumably to shield him from more trauma. Sam's parents babbled questions, heartbreak, confusion. I stepped back, letting them try to console their daughter. She shrank into herself, broken sobs echoing in the silence. I just watched, arms folded, the shadow of satisfaction flickering beneath my heartbreak. This was the first taste of the devastation. I wanted them all to see the magnitude of her betrayal. Eventually, her father approached me, eyes watering with anger. Why would you do it like this? He demanded. I glared at him, scorn curling my lip. Ask your daughter. She's the one who lied, bedded another man, tricked me into raising his child. And you blame me for revealing it. Don't talk to me about cruelty." He looked ready to argue, but Sam's pitiful moan cut him off. "Dad, please, I deserve this," she whimpered. "I messed up. So badly." Her parents sank to the floor to comfort her. My father re-emerged, and I gestured for him to take me aside. We moved into the kitchen, leaving the wailing behind. I felt a rush of adrenaline draining, replaced by an odd emptiness. Dad put a hand on my shoulder. "Son," he said quietly, "I know you're hurting. But that was brutal." I swallowed. "Sometimes the truth is brutal, Dad. You taught me that." He bowed his head, not answering. I stood by the sink, letting the silence weigh. The plan was complete. I destroyed her illusions, humiliated her in front of everyone. But as I stared out the window into the snowy darkness, I wondered, was that enough? Because something still gnawed at me. My vow to ensure this betrayal haunted them beyond tonight. Mike, especially, needed to feel the consequences. Perhaps that was the next step. Let his name burn in rumors. Let him watch his career falter when clients learned of his affair with a married woman. Already, I'd emailed some well-chosen rumors to local circles, hinting at impropriety with clients. Everything orchestrated to sabotage him slowly. A sudden hush fell in the living room. Sam must have passed out, or was overwhelmed by tears. Her parents whispered in frantic hushes. My father retreated upstairs to check on my mother and our boy. I lingered in the kitchen, the old faucet drip echoing. The same drip that woke me weeks ago. How far had I come since that restless night on the couch? I looked at the spot where Sam used to stand in the mornings, pouring coffee, smiling like everything was fine. I walked back into the living room. Sam lay curled on the floor, eyes squeezed shut, lids trembling. Her parents flanked her, both stricken. She looked up at me, pleading, "Jim, I know you can't forgive me, but please, don't abandon our son. He adores you. He doesn't. He doesn't know any of this. Please, he's yours in every way that matters." Her voice cracked. For a second, raw fatherly love twisted inside me, threatening to break my resolve. But I hardened my heart. "Should have thought about that before letting Mike father your child," I said coldly. She sobbed. That night ended in disarray. My parents left, deeply shaken. Sam's parents stayed to comfort her. I holed up in the guest room. The next morning, I discovered Sam's father had taken our boy to their place for a few days, to spare him the tension. Sam sat at the kitchen table, eyes puffy, wearing the same clothes from last night. She didn't look up when I entered. I poured myself a coffee, ignoring her for a minute. She finally spoke, voice hollow. "I'll pack. I assume you want me out." I sat down. "You do what you want," I said. "But the house is in my name, so you're on shaky ground if you try to claim it. I've already talked to a lawyer." She nodded absently, fresh tears slipping down. "Yes, I understand." I studied her. There was no joy in this victory, just a cold satisfaction that her smug illusions were gone. "I want a divorce, obviously," I said. "And I want your signature on an agreement that acknowledges the child is not mine biologically, so you can't come after me for custody or support if you try that angle." "Understood." A sob caught in her throat. "But he loves you. Are you really just going to cut him out?" Her face contorted with grief. "He's not to blame." She clasped her hands, like praying. "Please, don't punish him for my mistake." I hesitated, my breath shallow. "You punished him the moment you chose to lie," I answered quietly, swallowing the lump in my throat. She broke again, voice choked. I was weak. "I'm sorry. I can't lose both of you." I couldn't bear to look at her anymore. I stood, leaning on the table. "I'm done talking," I said. "Do what you have to do. Sign the papers. Let's end this." Then I turned and left her in the silent kitchen. I spent the rest of the day out, ignoring her texts. She must have told Mike everything. Because I got a phone call from him that night. Multiple calls, which I declined. Then a text. We need to talk. This is about my child, too. I'll do whatever it takes. I didn't respond. Let him sweat. Let him realize the shitstorm he's unleashed. Maybe he'd try to salvage his reputation or attempt some custody claim. None of that mattered to me. He'd never have the normal father-son bond he might have wanted. In time, maybe he'd try. Or maybe not. Either way, the boy's life was overshadowed by betrayal. That was the point. A slow poison that seeps into the future. That's how I wanted it. For a week, Sam lingered in the house, listless, packing occasionally. She tried to talk to me. I refused, locked in the guest room, or pretended to sleep on the couch. Meanwhile, I continued building the rumor mill. People in town started whispering about Mike Donovan, the instructor who seduced a married client. Word spread that he fathered a child out of wedlock. Another rumor claimed he'd done the same with a different woman. I had no proof, but rumors don't require proof to do damage. The local skiing community is tight-knit. Clients canceled lessons, complaining to the lodge manager about unprofessional conduct. I made sure to stoke that fire. The manager quietly asked Mike to take a break. Step by step, his livelihood crumbled. Each piece a quiet victory for me. One evening, near the end of that week, Sam confronted me in the hallway. I was about to leave for the grocery store, or so I claimed. She blocked my way, tears in her swollen eyes. "Jim," she rasped, "I'm leaving tomorrow. I can't stay here. It's killing me." I nodded. "Good." She pressed a trembling hand to my chest. "But please, you were my husband. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but can you at least say goodbye without hatred?" Her desperation tugged at me. Once upon a time, I loved her. She had been my wife, the mother of the child I thought was mine. Now, all I felt was that cold emptiness. I took her hand, gently moved it away. "Goodbye, Sam. I hope you find peace, but don't expect it from me." That was all. I stepped past her, out the door. I didn't look back. The next day, I returned to a half-empty house. Her clothes, personal items, gone. She left me a note on the kitchen counter, tear-stained. "I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you like this. I'm leaving the boy with my parents, while I figure out what to do. Please, for his sake, don't abandon him forever." I read it, then crumpled it up, tossing it in the trash. The final stage was complete. Sam's illusions lay shattered. Mike's life was in disarray. And the boy, well, he was an innocent casualty. I acknowledged a flicker of guilt about that, but the raw wound in my chest overshadowed it. The memory of each deceit, each stolen moment, fueled my resolve. The seeds of ruin had been planted. Now they'd grow on their own. In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce, citing adultery and irreconcilable differences. Sam didn't contest. She was too broken, or maybe too ashamed. Mike tried to contact me a few times, wanting to sort things out. I ignored him. My parents tried to intervene, asking if I'd reconsider the boy's place in my life. I told them I needed time. That was my final power play, the knowledge that my child, once I believed him to be, was not mine. I had no legal obligation, but the emotional ties linger. That's the subtle knife twisting inside me. Maybe one day, I'll wrestle with the moral cost of my revenge. For now, though, it stands. The unspoken understanding that I can pull away from him at any moment, leaving Sam to watch her child grow up fatherless, or in a broken arrangement with the real father. An ongoing punishment for her betrayal. For him too, if he has any decency. Some nights, when the house is quiet, I remember Sam's laughter from years ago, the softness of her hair against my cheek, the naive excitement we shared planning our future. Then I think of the text messages, the snapshots of them kissing, the paternity test results. That's the turning screw in my chest. The brain is an odd beast. It conjures up old, sweet memories alongside this savage humiliation. It's enough to make a man insane if he doesn't channel it. I channeled it into a slow, methodical plan. And I carried it out to the bitter end. I still sleep on the couch, sometimes, out of habit. The bed in the master bedroom feels foreign. The drip in the kitchen faucet returned a few days ago. I haven't bothered to fix it yet. That constant, rhythmic noise at night reminds me how one small sound can unravel everything. Drip, drip, drip. That's how it began, how it ended, how it all collapsed. If I look at my reflection in the dark TV screen, I see a man hollowed out by betrayal, but also grimly satisfied. Not every wound is visible, but it can devour you from the inside. I embrace it now, my rage, my heartbreak, my victory. And that's the story. That's how I discovered her affair, destroyed her illusions, and left both her and her lover with a future overshadowed by deceit. Some might call it cruel or vindictive. Maybe it is, but I won't pretend to be noble about it. She took everything I held sacred and ground it into the dirt. So I repaid her in kind on my own terms, with my own brand of justice. Maybe, one day, I'll find real peace, but for now, all that remains is the memory of the drip, 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 and the knowledge that I can finally sleep, alone, unburdened by her lies, and free to let the bitterness wash over me until it dulls to a numb acceptance. That, I suppose, is all the closure I'll ever really need.